All right. So sleep is the most important thing you can possibly do to ensure that you live a long time. That's according to William Dement. Let's put forth in The Perfect Health Diet, chapter 43, by Paul and Xiuqing Jaminet. And they make a pretty good case for that, actually. They start off the chapter by talking about how night owls and shift workers get cancer at greatly increased rates, as well as heart disease, diabetes, and other things. And they advise you, this is the main point of the chapter, is to regulate your sleep cycle, your circadian rhythm, with light primarily, then with eating, and then with exercise. So all of those three factors affect your circadian rhythm. So we'll just do a quick little summary of each of those points. So light, how will this affect your rhythm? Pretty obvious. It turns out that you want to get sunlight in the morning, particularly blue and ultraviolet spectrum, which, go out in the sun, it'll provide plenty of that. There's something in your brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. And this is the mechanism that takes neural input from your eyes and based on that produces melatonin at nighttime if you're not getting blue and ultraviolet light in your eyes. And this melatonin will help you sleep, of course. It also kicks your cortisol, into gear in the morning to get you up. So this is also based on, the input from your eyes. So if you have a lesion in your suprachiasmatic nucleus, your circadian rhythm will not be affected by light. So you could be, it could be 2 a.m., you could be blasted by, studio lights or whatever, and you wouldn't be affected at all. So it's kind of cool to know that there's this one mechanism in your brain that is directly responsible for interpreting the light that hits your eyeballs. And and you can use that to your advantage in several ways. Number one, you don't want to block it. You don't want to obstruct that. So when you go out and you get your sun in the morning, they advise, maybe not wearing contacts because that blocks ultraviolet light, which may, like blue light, influence your suprachiasmatic nucleus or whatever. And also you want to take the sunglasses off. And you only need like 15 minutes of sun, probably take off your shirt or something like that. And then the other side of this coin is avoid light at nighttime. It's, thrown around a lot, but bears repeating because I know I don't do it, and this is like my thing, right? Granted, sleep is the weakest part in my health repertoire at this moment. I'm working on it. So turn out the lights at night. Even a little bit of ambient light while you're sleeping can reduce melatonin, can suppress your production by greater than 50%. So it's bad. TV before bed is deadly. There are a lot of these studies that show that mortality is extremely strongly correlated with television watching. So I think one study says that for every hour you're in front of the TV, your life expectancy goes down by 22 minutes. So it's like you're wasting an hour and 22 minutes. You live 22 minutes less and you waste an hour. But interestingly here, Paul and Xiuqing say that, and there's a bunch more studies like that. But Paul and Xiuqing say that the reason for that is probably because watching TV at nighttime disrupts your circadian rhythms. So like we just talked about, you'll have way less melatonin, which has all these crazy effects. So what you really want to do is limit your TV to daytime viewing. So interesting hypothesis there. I know for me, looking at the computer definitely has that effect. I definitely stay up. And they talk about wearing these orange goggles to block out the blue, spectrum light at nighttime. I actually do that, and when I do, it helps me sleep. Like, you can notice it. So that's pretty much it for the light. Fairly intuitive summary. Get light in the morning from the sun. Don't obstruct it, and limit your light at nighttime, especially watching TV and whatnot. Now, sleep. This one's super big. We have a quote from William Dement, who wrote The Science of Sleep, I think. And he says, "Sleep is the most important predictor of how long you will live, perhaps more important than smoking, exercise, or high blood pressure." And pretty intense statement there, but you know, this chapter has more than enough justification for that sentence, I would say. Paul and Shu Ching have a cool quote here too. They say, 1 week of sleep curtailment in young men, I guess this is based on a study, induces the hormonal profile of a diabetic elderly person. Insulin resistance, high levels of stress hormones, low levels of testosterone and growth hormone. So 1 week of sleep curtailment in young men induces the hormonal profile of a diabetic elderly person. That's pretty intense. And frankly, you know, if you work out, if you go to the gym, I'm sure you can feel this. I know I can. When I don't sleep well, I just can't, you can't really engage your nervous system. You can't lift well. One thing that happens to me is I sweat a lot. If I haven't been sleeping well, I'm just in the gym and I'm like just sweating. Kind of weird, but anyway. And one more point about sleep. If you have sleep apnea, which messes up your sleep, it's bad news. But if you have severe sleep apnea, in one study, people were 5 times more likely to die of cancer. Kind of morbid, but there you go. Get treated if it's a problem. And they also talk about meals, the effect of meals on setting your circadian rhythm. And basically they say you want to eat during daylight hours, and also you want to get your carbs at nighttime. This will help regulate your circadian rhythm, and also carbs promote, sleepiness. And exercise. They go on and on about exercise here. It seems like they could put that in a separate chapter almost. But it's fairly intuitive. They give quite a bit of detail, so check it out. But they basically say that, they say a lot of things, but it's interesting. They hypothesize that one of the main benefits of exercise, despite the physical benefits, is that it will enhance your circadian rhythms, especially doing it in nature. There are a lot of studies that show that exercise in a green space, quote unquote, which just means nature, has great benefits, beyond the benefits of actually exercising. So, yeah, good chapter. What else do they have here? A lot of other things about exercise, but that's more or less the main point. They also say that benefits of exercise are significant, even if the exercise isn't making the exerciser fit. So just get out and do moderate exercise. That's the thing. There's greatly diminishing returns after you jog 2 miles. That's great. You're not going to be that much healthier if you sprint like 10 miles a day. Probably be super bad for you if you did that, actually. So that's pretty much it. That's chapter 42 of chapter 42, I believe, of Perfect Health Diet by Paul and Shu Ching Jen.